Welcome back, I'm Ryan from Bluewood Gaming, and today I'm going to be going over my thoughts on Monster Hunter World. Now, this video is actually a week late. I was sick last week and wasn't able to make this video, so here we finally are, and I'm giving my thoughts on Monster Hunter World. Now, I was thinking of just going over my experiences with Monster Hunter World and talking about my history with Monster Hunter, which is exactly 0. This is my first Monster Hunter game I've ever played. But in my time playing this and talking to other people that have played this, I found that essentially there's 3 different types of people that play this game or think about playing this game. There's people that understand what it's about and say it's not my kind of game. There's people that understand what it's about and they decide that it's something that they're probably going to like, and usually those people end up liking it. And then the third type of people is people who go into it not knowing anything about Monster Hunter, and then they end up either liking it or disliking it. But essentially the only people that play this game and don't like it are people that go in not knowing really what you do on an hour-to-hour basis in this game. So that's really what I'm going to be focusing on in this, because I actually quite like this game. But I went in knowing exactly what I was going to be doing. So let's go over what you're normally going to be doing in this game. So you normally start out in the hub world, where you can usually buy potions or whatever you need to get ready. Then typically you will go up to the workshop to see what you want to upgrade, or what you want to craft, what kind of armor upgrades you want to make, if you want to upgrade your weapon, different things like that. And then that's typically where you will find what mission you want to do, because each weapon requires specific things that you get from killing specific creatures. In this video, you see me using a switchblade, or a switch axe, I believe it's called, that is built from Anjanath parts, which, if you've seen any of the promotional material, essentially the Anjanath is the giant T-Rex looking thing with wings that breathes fire. So I have the Anjanath switch axe, and it required me to kill the Anjanath several times. So typically you'll go to the armor or the blacksmith to just see what you kind of want to go and hunt this time. Then you'll go up to the quest giver, where you can either post a new quest, which is where you start the quest yourself, or you can join somebody else's quest. Both of those are valid options. You both get pretty much the same rewards, but you don't get to progress through the story if you just join other people's quests. There are several different kinds of quests. There's the assigned quests, which are essentially the story of the game. Then there's the optional quests, which are, as they sound, they're the optional side quests. Then you have the investigations, which we'll get every once in a while, which is essentially just another version of the optional quest. And then there are special events that you can join in, which I believe they require you to be online for the events, but they let you get special items and whatnot. And they're usually timed special events, so you have to play during the specific time that they are going on, which is perfectly normal for something called an event. So then, once you have chosen a quest, you can either depart from the hub area right away, or you can stay around. Typically, it's at this point that you would go to the canteen to get some sort of meal, and meals buff you in one way or another, usually giving you more attack, more stamina, more health, things like that. And then you depart on your hunt, and you go and hunt whatever the quest target is for that specific adventure. There are hunts where you have to go out into the bigger areas. These are your typical hunts that you will go do. In those, you're typically going to have to find the trail of the monster, which will be some sort of tracks, and then you'll have to follow the tracks to eventually lead you to the monster that you're going after, and then you'll be able to fight it, and you'll usually have to chase it around. And I'll get into the fights themselves here in a bit, but once you finish fighting the monster, then you can start carving parts off of them, and then you go back to the hub world and repeat the whole process. Now, if you're not going out into the big open world, then there's also like arenas that they have in the game, which are places where you just go and you know exactly where the monster's going to be because they're in the arena, and then you just go and fight them. So now that we've gotten what you're typically going to be doing, let's jump into the fights like I was talking about earlier, because this is the meat of the game. Nobody really buys Monster Hunter to go through the whole process of just endlessly farming monsters to try to get better gear. No, you're here for the fighting, and so as you can see on the screen, I'm doing quite a bit of fighting. During this entire video, I use the same weapon. It's a switch axe, like I said, from the Anjanath. There are multiple different types of weapons, like big katanas, there's a sword and shield, there's several different bows and crossbows. So pretty much any type of weapon that you would want, there is a version of it. And each different type of weapon has 20, 30 plus different versions that you can upgrade with. The switch axe alone, I know, has 30, maybe even 40 different versions of it, and there's like 8-10 different types of weapons, so each of those have 30 to 40 different variants that you can upgrade into. So there's a lot of variety in the weapons that you can actually get, but each weapon in each class has the same moveset. So the switch axe that I have here is the same moveset as the starting switch axe. They don't change it up for the special versions of each type of weapon. So now let's move on to how it actually feels fighting the monsters. Now, I've had a lot of people try to explain this to me, because fighting monsters in Monster Hunter World is a lot different than in a lot of other games. Essentially, the way that I like to think about this, since I'm such a fan of Dark Souls, I think of each main monster in a hunt as a boss in Dark Souls. Granted, these guys take a lot longer and have a lot more health, but essentially it's the same thing of learning the moves that the monster is able to do, learning where they're going to go across the map if it is one of the larger open maps that you're fighting it in, learning when your openings are, when to dodge, all that kind of stuff that you would typically do with a boss, and then just putting that into practice, because you're going to be fighting the same kind of creature over and over again. I think at this point I've fought the Anjanath 20 plus times just to try to get different parts of him. So you're going to be fighting these creatures over and over and over again. So that's why really it helps to, for me at least, to look at them kind of like their Dark Souls bosses. And speaking of the health, that's something that surprises quite a bit of people when they play this. Pretty much everything in this game has a exorbitant amount of health. Now, it doesn't actually say how long or how many hit points each specific creature takes to actually go down, but Anjanaths specifically, because I keep talking about them, and that's what I know the most as of right now. Anjanaths solo take anywhere from like 10 to 15 minutes to kill, and when you're in a group, there's health multipliers, not health additions, but health multipliers, so it can take a long time to actually kill some of these creatures. I remember recently, myself and one other person were hunting against a Polymew, I believe, which is kind of like a giant furry bat with like the neck of a toad because it swells up huge with this air sac. And that hunt alone took nearly 40 minutes. And each hunt has a time limit, but it rarely actually comes into effect. The time limits are normally 45 to 50 minutes, but occasionally those time limits will come back and actually put you on somewhat of a strain. So some of these fights can take a long time, which is something that most people definitely aren't really prepared for if they haven't played a Monster Hunter game before. So now that I've gone through pretty much what you're going to be doing on an hour-by-hour basis in this game, I'm going to go over my thoughts and then end off this video. Personally, like I said before, this is my first Monster Hunter game. I've played Monster Hunter-like games before, but this is the first actual Monster Hunter game. And it took a little bit of adjusting to get to. Like, there's definitely things that you're going to have to get used to. Like, for me personally, the preparation that goes into each hunt, I often found myself in the beginning going in to hunt without refilling my potions, without getting all the extra stuff that I needed. Occasionally I found myself going into hunts where the armor that I had equipped just wasn't going to be good enough for the creature that I was fighting. And in fact, most of the armors in this game will give you buffs in some regards. Like, it will give you a buff to fire, but it'll give you negative buffs to, like, ice. Now, if you're going up against a fire enemy, it's perfectly fine to have buffs, or to have negative buffs or debuffs against ice, because you're not going to be running into that. But if you keep that armor on and go fight against a creature that only does ice attacks, then you're going to be taking extra damage because you're wearing the wrong armor. And just dealing with stuff like that really kind of was something that I had to get used to. And I've been using this Anjanath Switch Axe for a long time, and it's worked really well, but I haven't come up against a creature that is strong against fire yet, or at least one besides the Anjanath, because I can still do pretty decent damage to the Anjanath with his own weapon. But if I have to, I'm still not used to taking out a completely different weapon because it has better buffs against whatever I'm fighting against. And that's just going to be something that comes in time for me, and for many people it will, and if you've played Monster Hunter games before, then this is just par for the course. Something else that I didn't really get used to right away was keeping track of all the things that you do in this, because I'm used to, in Dark Souls, keeping track of my health and stamina, but that's pretty much about it. And also, technically, character placement in the arena, but that's done quite a bit differently in this game. But in this, just the things that I have to keep track of are the amount of potions that I have, how much stamina I have, how much health, the edge on my weapon, whether it's sharp enough or not, because you actually have to use a whetstone to sharpen your blades in the middle of fight sometimes. And then for the Switch Axe specifically, when I hit an enemy, it starts to get a charge, and I can, once it gets enough of a charge, I can discharge that with an elemental discharge to do extra damage to an enemy. So I have to keep track of that as well. Because I mostly use the blade portion of the Switch Axe, or the like greatsword portion of the Switch Axe, I have to keep track to make sure that the like energy gauge for my weapon doesn't switch it back into axe mode too early. And so there's all these different things that I have to keep track of that, while it is easy to keep track of them, it is not exactly normal in most games for you to have to keep track of that many things while you're still dodging an enemy or something. Thankfully, though, there are enough breaks in the fights where you can go and check these kind of things really quickly, which you can all do that without having to open up any menus. You can see pretty much everything that I just said without having to open up a single menu. So that is all really, really good game design. And speaking of good game design, in a year of shitty microtransactions and shitty company policies and game practices, this game is able to stay away from all of that. When the game first came out, it actually had an event where you could play against a special type of monster and get gear straight out of Horizon Zero Dawn. Currently, as of the time of recording this, there's a special event going on where you can fight the specific creature in an arena and get gear that makes you look exactly like Ryu from Street Fighter. And in a year of shitty microtransactions, other game developers might make you pay to take part in these things, but in Monster Hunter, they just let you go and do it. It's a free event that's going on. And there's no loot boxes anywhere near this. I actually don't think that this game has microtransactions whatsoever, which is a breath of fresh air. So for what you're getting for this, it is a ton of fun, and there's hundreds of hours worth of stuff here. I know my friend is currently reaching about the 150 hour mark in this game, and so there is a ton of content to go through in this. And personally, I think that if you know what you're getting into and you like the concept of going and hunting down creatures, then this is definitely worth both the time and the money, because you're going to be putting a lot of time into this, and it is a full price game that probably isn't going to be getting a sale anytime soon, because this game has actually been selling really, really well from what I've been hearing. So yeah, that's pretty much all that I have to say about Monster Hunter World. I don't know if there's going to be any more Monster Hunter World content on this channel. In the past, I said that I might make some guides or something, but I just haven't really had much time to play a whole ton of Monster Hunter since of school and stuff like that. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to fulfill the kind of guides that I was talking about potentially doing. So yeah, that's going to be it for this. Remember, as always, I'm Ryden from Bluewood Gaming, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.